All right. Welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today, I'm pretty excited about this one. We have our friend Shaun Shubert here, the owner of Red Seal Martial Arts. He's a professional fighter, retired now.
Recently, yeah.
Moved into the entrepreneur world to become Red Seal Martial Arts and coaching, and now is moving into another avenue of his life where he's pre-launching a book. He's gone from fighting to entrepreneurship to being an author. So hopefully we have enough time to talk about all those things, but welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Would love to hear. I'll selfishly ask the questions that I'm interested in the most. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm super interested in your Muay Thai and kind of what started you down that path, and maybe even tell everybody a little bit about like Muay Thai itself.
Muay Thai itself, to me, is super interesting because in correlation with me, it's where I ended up, but I actually started in classical martial arts, Kempo, Shotokan. I got my black belt second degree in a couple of classical martial arts that I did growing up just as a kid in the 90s before UFC got popular and took hold and really evolved how martial arts and combat sports was being trained and being looked at. Before you had boxing and all that, but it was very violent. It was kind of like a different demographic. I was playing hockey and playing football, more team sports, and then my parents went through a really rugged divorce, and I was just in upheaval. I was acting out, you name it, I was doing it. School trouble, home trouble, fighting with everybody, physically, verbally, just digging my heels in, being rebellious, you name it. I did them all. And from that, I was naturally just put into activities to stay busy, right? And martial arts was all the things that you look for: discipline, honor, pride, self-respect, respect for others, all these other things. Plus the physical nature of it, getting you in shape, yeah. It was later that I found combat sports after the UFC had developed, after MMA, mixed martial arts, had grown a local scene around here. And actually, Muay Thai was still underground. It was actually illegal, meaning they had no sanctioning bodies for Muay Thai. It was still so misunderstood in this part of the world. And I just wanted to do more. I was getting out of high school, started competing in MMA, wanted to know, did my black belt in karate mean anything? Could I really fight? Could I really defend myself? And I got all the answers by jumping feet first into the pool, but also showed me where I was missing, where I had a lot of holes, how much I could fight or couldn't fight. It was glaring. I'll stop there because that's where my passion was. That's what I was doing while I was in high school and getting out of high school, while I was doing culinary as a trade. And just keeping myself busy, just keeping myself on track. It was always kind of like a home base, a hub I could always go back to. Hockey season was over, karate had no season. School got out, there was no end of your tuition, right? You just kept going. It was always continued education. So it gave me that kind of focus. Once I got into the sport aspect of it way later down the road and had my own gym, skipping a whole bunch of the stuff in between, which led me to that point. I then later found a home in Muay Thai. Muay Thai originates from Thailand, and the thing that was really cool for me that made me really love it even more was kind of the origin story of it, which I think is kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Which is basically their Revolutionary War is Muay Thai. Same how Americans love their guns, the Thais love Muay Thai because it's how they fought for their freedom. It was always part of their culture. It was kind of their ancient martial arts. It was how they trained their military. It was called Muay Boran. And what happened was they were always at war while the countries were forming. Before Thailand was even Thailand, it was Siam, and it was next to Burma, and there was all these wars with the Burmese and the Thais. And essentially, the story that kind of exploded Muay Thai into having some real world relevance was they had captured a Thai who fought all these Burmese army soldiers, generals, you name it, beat the hell out of all these guys using this Muay Thai, Muay Boran, as it was then, in 1774. And essentially, he got freed and they won these wars, and it just is like ingrained in their culture from there. And then after that, kind of 18th century, 19th century, they started doing it more as sport, and then it grew to have some rules. And then after World War II, they built the first largest stadium in the world specifically to host Muay Thai events.
Oh, wow.
And they have it still there. It's called Lumpini Stadium, Rajadam Stadium, and Lumpini Stadium, and they're both still there. And they're the first places they only have Muay Thai shows in Thailand. There, it's just so ingrained in their culture.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like a super cool thing for me because like I kind of found my way to having a home in Muay Thai through all these different styles of fighting, just because I wanted to get good at it.
Right. Well, that's super interesting. So I don't know a whole lot about Muay Thai, but I trained a little bit of that, and I know that a lot of the folks in Thailand start very young, like
Super young,
like 6,
Yeah.
7, 8, 9,
even
10.
younger sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, yeah, depending on where you are and who you are and what your family's doing. I mean, there's generations where I've gone there several years in a row now, but last year I was there, I had a father and 2 sons that were working at the gym, and then we all went to corner another fighter. That means coaching them at the fights. And the guy that was the cut man, he goes in the back and he wraps everybody's hands up and tapes them up and greases them up and makes sure they got the smelling salts between rounds. But he was the other guy's brother, and they have another third brother in Chiang Mai. It's like another, like half a day plane ride. He's like on the island. He's doing Muay Thai. So it's like they've been doing Muay Thai in this family for generations, 30, 40, whatever years, and 300 fights from the uncle who's not even fighting, he's just wrapping hands, and the other guy's coaching, and the 2 sons are doing it.
And as far as I understand too, like, I mean, it's not the gentlest of sports, but nonetheless, yeah, kind of like time honored in that culture. And some of those folks are 19, 20 years old with hundreds of professional fights, which is
there's no amateur fighting in Thailand.
No, it's
just all professional fights. So you're 5 years old, you're basically fighting for money. There's a lot of gambling that still goes into it. The military and the government actually are the sanctioning bodies of Muay Thai in Thailand. They're the ones that call the shots. They make the rules. It's all based on what the military says, what the government says, what the folks that control the betting, call them whatever you want to call them,
So it's like, is it like a household sport?
Oh, for sure. It's the same as like, you see this Cardinals jersey, like Muay Thai, like everywhere. People walking down the streets in Muay Thai shorts, just like you'd see somebody in a Michael Jordan jersey, you'd see somebody in a Rotang shirt or, Stamp Fairtex or any of these other big names. Yeah,
So what's the difference? Like you said, you went through all these different kind of dialects of martial arts, and then you found Muay Thai, and it sounds, and I know I'm asking kind of a silly question because the difference is like so vast, right? It's the culture, it's the history, but what's the actual like?
Well, sure. Yeah, the rule set.
Okay.
There's several sports that are all striking arts. There are several sports that are just grappling arts. there are several arts that are kind of mixed, and the most famous of which, being the UFC, is a mix of stand-up, where you can use all sorts of striking. Your whole body can be used to strike with, and then you can use your whole body to put the guy on the ground, stay on top, control, submit, choke, break, whatever it is from the floor as well. And that's the most well-rounded, full gamut of things you can do to people. And then they have all the way things from that to boxing, where you're only allowed to use your hands for punching. Muay Thai is a little bit closer towards MMA, where you're allowed to punch and kick, but you're also allowed to knee and use your elbows to strike with. As well, you're allowed to clinch, and that is a form of grappling on your feet. Right. And they also have ways that you can sweep people, whether it be from catching kicks or from clinching and off balancing them and throwing them onto the floor. There's just a different little subset of rules about how you can get the leverage, how you can lift, throw, what part of your body you can sweep with. But essentially, all of the sweeps and trips you could use in Muay Thai, you could use in the full rules gamut of MMA.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So let's bring it back to you. So now you started as a younger person. How old were you when you think we started kind of just the beginning, like 6, 7, 8?
I was about 6 years old, yeah. My parents went through, like I said before, a real rocky divorce, and there was a lot of collateral damage around the household, whether it was physical or emotional things. Just to like get out of the house was kind of a blessing sometimes, and then there was some of these like more forced activities like family vacations, even though like mostly it should have just been bloodshed. Like, you know, why are we at Disney World when, you know, like yesterday you guys were throwing plates and today we're on a plane, so kind of wild. But
it's like when you started to fight, like I'm kind of interested in like if you want to talk about that. That's
yeah, for sure. Okay. The classical martial arts thing was kind of a jumping off point. And when I was about 10 years old, I went to a different karate school. And the guy that ran it was way more of a loose cannon. And that's where I had my first experience full contact sparring. It's where I had my first experience doing any kind of grappling. It was where I had my first experience any kind of like real like getting thrown on a cement floor. The only thing that was on the floor was rug. It was really, really rugged stuff. And part of it was that, you know, he had this kind of facade or persona that was like this drill sergeant, tough guy, never give up, and you know, it was good to a certain extent, but it really just fed that kind of like avenue for me. It fed that need to be physical. I also played hockey, got thrown out of more games than I could imagine. I had more penalty minutes than time on the ice. I was a good player. I was the captain of the varsity hockey team 3 out of my 4 years in high school. Wow. But I was just an animal. I just wanted to fight everybody. I just wanted to smash you. I wanted to like wave to your parents while I'm like smashing you in the boards. I was just like not right. You know, there was just some screws loose where I was just like really had that like real strong need for something physical, something to feel, something to do. So I didn't actually get into competitive fighting, even though I did karate tournaments and fought in hockey. That was really the extent of my like real fights. Sure. Then I was, as a hobbyist, going to martial arts and trying to do MMA probably when I was about 20 or so. It was for sure before I could legally drink. I was in the cage.
And you had Yeah, so this was like some amateur fights. How many amateur fights did you do in MMA?
5 amateur MMA fights, and I did well, meaning I got in there, I had the guts, I got an early kind of reputation of somebody that could like stand and bang, but you wanted to throw him on his head and keep him on the floor as long as possible. And that's what started to happen to me, is that people knew the sport. I had no wrestling as a background, just this kind of cruddy, hodgepodge fanboy grappling from karate, you know, and I found out real quick, like, dang, I have no idea how to fight, dude. You know, I got all these black belts and all these old trophies from karate tournaments and hi-ya and wearing your pajamas and patches and belts, and I'm like, I can't fight to save my life. So
that must have been a tough thought, though, to like have all that training and then get into the actual ring where the striking is great, but it's limited to some degree, and then people are wrestling you, using jiu-jitsu, taking you down, and then taking the fight to the ground, where then if you don't know that,
it's
then,
extremely frustrating.
Yeah, how did you deal with that? I mean,
I
that must have
stopped
been
doing
upsetting.
MMA.
Oh,
That's what led me to Muay Thai. I had the heart, and I am too thick to go through whatever. And there's a super long story in the middle where I got new trainers and got pushed into this owning a gym business, which is like far too long for 26 minutes left on this thing, dude. But what happened was, once I got this new coach who was into the sport a lot more, he was at UFC 7 cornering some of the big names. He's been around boxing, was like in here when all this stuff started taking off. He was like, you know, he was like a real ground level guy. And he started to coach me. After my 5th or 6th loss in MMA in a row, he was like, you know, like, why don't we just stay active with a couple of boxing fights, maybe do some kickboxing, and like just train some takedown defenses and maybe get your game a little bit, get your skill up a little bit. Because I had already done that. I already been chasing, getting better at wrestling and grappling, and got other coaches and was already on the hunt, even to the point where before my last MMA fight, I got hypnotized with seeing sports psychologists, and like it was the best, most clear time I had ever fought in the cage under that rule set, but just my skill level was so subpar at that point. And he essentially kind of sugarcoated or like disguised it under the guise of like, oh, let's just stay active, stay healthy, get you a little bit more experience in this and keep doing this. And kind of like this part just took off where I was naturally way better at it. It was less things to think about because I had eliminated that whole takedown. Guys are going to wrestle you and sit on you and punch you in the face, and you're going to have to worry about getting up and all these things. It was all out of my brain. Once I removed and decluttered my head, my performance was like whop, through the roof. So, and then all those tools from sports psychology and all the barriers that I couldn't jump or hurdle, break, whatever, through hypnosis and all that stuff was just like free and clear. And I was a brand new athlete, a brand new man, and I'm like, well, I'm having a lot of fun, you know. I'm doing amateur boxing, I'm doing Muay Thai, kickboxing, I'm exploring all these new things, and then I started to get recognition just from being that like real gritty dog fighting, like I'll bleed and sweat and yell and scream, and the crowd loves it, and I just started getting good at it.
awesome. I love that. So I love that you took something that you were passionate about, you explored it, you figured it out mentally, and then it transformed into like where you really not should be, but I guess the word should be, right? And now, so then you went Muay Thai, You went with the striking, and then what got you to kind of transition from being in the cage, in the Muay Thai, in the ring, to teaching? Because that's really what Red Shield martial arts is all about, right? Yeah.
It's actually the other way.
Okay.
Is I was trained culinary as a trade.
Okay.
I did it as a vocation in high school and then went right into the work field, skipped out on college. High school was a struggle anyways. You know, if it wasn't for sports, I would have barely got a D, right? Like, you can't play hockey if you don't have a D. If you're failing, you're off the team.
Right.
So I was like grinding, struggling in school just to get D's.
Wow.
And just so I could play hockey, just so I could not get pulled out of sports or, you know, the physical activity, the stuff that I liked. I'll read this book or I'll do this presentation. I'll at least get a D. I'll stay awake to get a D.
Yeah.
You know, I'll argue and make deals with teachers to get a D.
Right.
Like, so that's how I grew up. And then after high school, it was like find a home doing culinary. Had a better end to my high school career because it was like split up where I could like go out in the field and work. I'm like, fuck, I can't wait to get out of school and just keep working and working and working. And young, being in a band, wanted to be a rock star, never wanted to have a real job, was always in the bars, you name it, clubs, house bands, cooking food, bikers, girls, party boys, everybody loves the chef, especially if I can have a stiff drink with you too, and just it was all bad stuff that was associated with it, right? Like, it got me in more trouble, even though I was like getting happier, meaning like I was like less of like an angry person from this like divorced, broken home type of way. I was like, you know, had a life and was like enjoying activities and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
But it was like still no good for me. I was still hemorrhaging money because I'm drinking and smoking and doing whatever I'm doing to have a party. I'm getting arrested for dumb things.
Yeah.
It was madness, dude.
Yeah.
And I essentially got in so much trouble that I lost my business. I was renting a kitchen and doing my own culinary business, going to food shows and private parties, serving this guy's bar. But the other side of the coin was I was partying.
Yeah.
I was trying to like be a rock star just like in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And I lost everything. The guy that I was training with had his own demons and he was securing his own stuff, and he saw me and was like, hey, this kid could help me get out of my thing in business because he's desperate, he's young, he's hungry, he's already in here, he's already good at martial arts, he's already, you know, showing all this whatever and fighting, and he can maybe do this to my kind of karate school, right? He can bring it to the new era. He can bring us up to speed. And that guy ended up committing suicide a year after we had opened the gym together.
Wow. Sorry.
And
Paul?
yeah, his name was Paul Curtin. He was an urban legend in the area. He had 12 karate schools at one time. He did very well, and then same thing, declined. His demons caught up with him, and basically he kind of like thought he was securing his legacy, kind of packing his stuff away, making sure everything was kind of buttoned up, and then that was it. Took himself out, and it left me with this business I knew nothing about, a mentor that just offed himself off the planet, and I was like, I have no idea what the fuck's going on, dude.
Right.
And had already had a couple of tough MMA fights where I'm like down on myself, doubting, like, why would anybody want to learn from me? I can't fight. I can't do this. I'm bad at this martial arts. I'm cruddy. Why would anybody? So it almost was like some kind of core value. Like, I owe it to people. If I'm going to stay here and teach and ride this business out, like, I'm not going to be some punk on paper that like has a black belt but can't fight. I went out and got training and learned how to actually do the things I was teaching. I'm promoting personal protection, safety, all these kind of things, but I can't fight. Like, I want to tell your girlfriend, like, how to save her life in a bad when she's getting mugged, and like, but I can't even fight. Right? So how am I going to teach you, police officers, whoever, to stand up for themselves, to have confidence? And I got no confidence in myself. So I went out and fought for notoriety. I went out and fought to prove to myself, like, all right, you got more than just guts. Now you got skills. Now you got the kind of legs to stand on and say, like, hey, I'm over here. I own a martial arts school. I can teach you personal protection. I can teach you how to fight. I can teach you Muay Thai. I can teach you whatever I'm teaching you. And that was where it was kind of like the big thing for me, is because I started off teaching thinking like I had this guy to back me up, and then it was gone like that. And now I'm the guy, and everybody's looking to me, people that I thought were peers or that I looked at like they were, you know, like more like authority figures. They're looking at me like, hey, you're the only one with a gym now. Guess we're all coming here. Guess you're in charge. Yeah. So it boosted me into this leadership role. It forced me into this position where I had to be the leader. I was being looked to for guidance, looked into for business, all these kind of things. So it made me kind of jump into this place where I was like, I got to learn how to fight. I got to learn how to do all this stuff that I'm saying, because this other guy was supposedly like a badass or an urban legend, at least like people believed it. Like, I don't even believe it, so I better go out and start believing this. So that's what I did, is I went out and started fighting. And
Wow.
Yeah, and then that's amazing. And so then you take over the school. It does pretty well. You have this business going essentially. And now you're saying, and we had a really interesting conversation like right before, just like a tidbit of it, that you now are in this place of having learned a lot from your time, right? It's like to even get in the ring is something that people, it requires a special trait, right? It's like
Overcoming fear.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily special about it, but it is very, very difficult. And so it takes that overcoming fear, it takes that challenge, it takes the courage, it takes all the things that we, I think we naturally kind of value and are important. And so you've learned so much from that. And then now you're writing this book, and tell me a little bit about that, or tell us a little bit about this. The book, it's called Fighting Fear. So let's riff on that.
the book came to me after my last professional fight. I knew that I was going to retire. I'm 38. I had about 40 fights. I fought internationally. I fought here. I've taught seminars from here to Puerto Rico, up and down the coast. Be going out to New Mexico later on. And this guy that was training at my gym saw me fight. After the fight, I laid down the gloves. The promoter came in. It was one of the first promotions I had started at as early back as doing MMA at his promotion. I was the first fight at his MMA promotion to showcase Muay Thai at a professional level, sanctioned with small gloves on. And he comes in, microphone, surprise speech, and just hits me, right? Just start talking to these people. So I tell my story, I give a little background, I say thank you for all these years and all this stuff. And after the fight, after the speech, this guy starts breaking down, telling me that he's up for a promotion. He's led his team in some highest grossing sale and they want to promote him. But in order to get promoted, he has to fly to Las Vegas. He has to give a giant speech on a stage in front of whatever thousands of people it is from his company and talk about X, Y, and Z. And this guy was shitting his pants, scared. Didn't want the promotion because he didn't want to have to go do public speaking. So he says to me, you know, you could probably help me. And why would I help you? Meaning, you're my friend, I would help you, but like, why would it be me?
Yeah, why me?
Why could I do it? And he breaks it down in a perspective that's really foreign to me, which is the spectator, because I'm the fighter. So from the outside looking in, you got these cats that are walking down from the catwalks, you know, smoke, lights, you know, getting in there, ring, cage, whatever it is, fighting it out, bleeding, sweating, giving speeches after, performing in front of all these people, hollering, yelling, booing, cheering, you name it. He says, how do you do that?
Right.
Oh, whoa. I never really thought about it. It was just something that was such a desire for me. My reason why was so strong in the development of being a fighter to be able to serve other people with some kind of morality, right? I needed the moral compass to be able to say, hey, like, these are my guys, I trained them. And for people to be like, they got trained at Red Seal. That's serious business, right? Because people talk. It's just like anything else. Like, you could open whatever business you want. You could open a hair cutting salon, and you could be junk at haircuts, but you still do it. And when you leave, people are like, well, I'm never going back there again because those haircuts are terrible. Like, that was the opposite of what I wanted from my gym, right? I wanted when people leave, they're like, hey, they train with the real guy. You know, some people leave gyms and they're like, this guy's been looking like that for the last 15 years. His trainer must be terrible, or whatever the thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you really doing here, right? So I wanted the way people talked about me in my gym to be that of like, hey, this guy put in the work. Hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. Hey, these students that he's turning out are the real deal.
Right.
And that's what my reason why was, but I never thought about it in the other way. Like I said before, I always wanted to be something different. I never really wanted to work. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be a fighter. I wanted to be like whatever, dude. Like anything that's not 9 to 5, anything that's not pushing a pencil or shoveling shit, like anything but that stuff, dude. I was built for something different. I had no idea what it was, but I always knew it was not going to be that stuff.
Right.
So,
okay, and so then this guy comes and says, hey, you know, actually what you do is very like what I have to do. You know, I have to get in front of people.
Well, it was that I agreed to start coaching him, and it turned into, well, I'll put you through this 10-week fight camp like I do with my fighters. And he got in shape physically. I put him through the reps because you have to exhaust the body to tame the mind. So he went through physical fight camps. As well, we met once a week and discussed strategy, what his team was looking for, what his bosses were looking for, what the expectations for the speech were, and we just mapped all this stuff out, like just outline style. And then the more information we were getting, the more we would just kind of have these like little kind of psychology sessions, little therapy sessions. What do you want? What does your boss want? And what are you getting hung up on? And then by the end of it, we're doing reps where I'm turning the lights off in my gym and putting up little spotlights or a little whatever, kind of just mock trial or mock, you know, performance. And announcing him, here comes Steve out to the stage, and fake clapping and the whole thing, and just the whole bit. And we did all these kind of like visualizations, all kinds of guided hypnosis. It's really like a guided relaxation with the power of suggestion is what I really do. And just get you to see, visualize, believe in yourself. And then with neuroplasticity, visualization actually rewires the neural pathways in your brain. So you can get just as much from visualizing as you can from actually doing the physical reps. So we did that, and with the guided relaxation and the suggestion, you allow me to get into your subconscious. You allow your conscious to be more in the present because you're focusing on what I'm saying, and you're allowing me to get into the subconscious and kind of like untangle some knots and give you reframes so that when you're in this awakening process that you're coming out of it like rejuvenated and like in a different state of mind, a different perspective.
Yeah. So that's incredible. So and I totally agree. I mean, everything you said is like a lot of the things that we talk about, like kind of like, reframing and so right about the neuroplasticity. There's plenty of studies showing that visualization is, does help us learn. And in fact, like I always bring it up, but like musicians know that too. Musicians are always visualizing their instrument in their mind and always getting, they can play the instrument in their mind, like verbatim, which I think is so cool. But nonetheless, so you put this guy through this training, and hopefully he does well. But again, his first big speech, who knows how that went?
Crushes
Did
it.
he? Yeah.
Crushes it. Las Vegas stage, Aria Hotel and Casino. I can't remember if he was like 5,000, 6,000 people, but like crushed it. And he sends me a little clip while he was there, because he's like texting me the whole time backstage, getting nervous, doing my things, blah, 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 setting my triggers, rolling my anchors, and sends me a little video somebody recorded. Standing ovation. People
Amazing.
said he gave the best speech out of the whole company. They did this big company summit, and he was one of the keynote speakers the whole weekend. And he's getting like ranting and raving, and how did you do that? And blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just like that training and that confidence and like visualizing that success, and then just going out and doing it, man. Like letting the training take over.
So this happened, and then you wrote the book.
Yeah, I started piecing the book together, and I came up with all these kind of outlines and blueprints and ideas that I was going to use for Waz's business fight camp, as I was calling it, and it gave me this kind of framework to start building from. And if any of the people that watch this podcast are interested in kind of looking at this framework, I have all these printouts, PDFs. I have availability for one-to-one online coaching where you can get this framework. If you just DM me on Instagram, follow me at Shaun Red Seal Muay Thai, all of it's underscored, and I'll send you the blueprint just mentioned that you saw me on the show with the boys today. That is where the book really comes into play. I start talking to this clinical psychologist in Switzerland. She and I say, let's start developing a product. We have a lot of similar goals, a lot of similar backgrounds. Like, we should team up and profit and share our knowledge with everybody. And we developed this thing called Mental Fight Camp, and just the creative bug kind of hit me. So in parallel with creating time to write this online course and record it with my partner in Switzerland, I chunked out all these other delegations for my gym to run smooth so that I could step away and write this book. And then that was it. We were just writing, recording, and then I was off in my own world writing this book and just living in that kind of like new state. It was something that really took a long time for me to figure out, where I have been saying real recently, I've been on a lot of different business podcasts. For the first time in the last 2 months, I've been on podcasts that have nothing to do with Muay Thai, had nothing to do with combat sports. And these people are saying things, asking questions. Light bulb goes off. I've been in business for 10 years. I started doing business last November.
Yeah.
Right? Because I developed an environment that was good for fighters. I developed an environment that was good for me to be a professional fighter and still have a job.
Right. So yeah, and I think everything. I mean, it's remarkable to see the progression there, right, from the kind of like rugged home, and then the kind of like, not to say that you were delinquent, but
I was a delinquent is like a really nice way to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, like, without getting too far off track, but that's where I learned a lot of the psychology stuff
Right.
too, was because the court ordered my brother and sister and I to be in therapy.
Wow.
Because such a madhouse. It led me to ups and downs, roller coasters, emotions, you name it, depression. I end up in the psych hospital
Yeah.
for, I can't remember, almost a month, something like that, a couple of weeks at least, which put me into all these groups and self-help and reflection and all this stuff that is now, to me, like a huge tool that most people should be doing all this stuff anyways, but we only direct it to the troubled people, or the people that are like, you know, like cry out for help people, or the red flag people, or the like walking dumpster fire people, like, oh, get that guy some help, like, you know, but like, you need it, I need it, we should all be in these like super cognizant states of mind, like being present, being aware of our breathing, being able to visualize, being able to set goals, and all this kind of stuff that I learned through that. And just because I was a punk and because I was rebellious, I was like, man, poo-pooing all that stuff, like all these narcs and all these goody twos and all these whatevers, because I was just like an angry whatever type of kid, you know. And actually, it's probably the most valuable thing that I learned as a child, growing up in the system like that. Like, you know, I lived at home with my mother, but like in the system, like the police were at my house. Like, I was in court all the time. Like, in, you know, so.
Well, you know, we talk about this often, like the proactivity, but, you know, one thing that people don't necessarily recognize is that unprocessed emotions manifest as actions, whether you recognize them or not. And so I hear, you know, the kind of, the anger and the frustration and you know, the feeling of disappointment with whatever.
It's just
and then
misplaced, though, really.
Yeah, and it gets manifested as behavior. It comes out
Of course.
and self-sabotage and whatnot. So you've built these kind of tools for yourself. You've used them, and while doing remarkable things, like getting into the ring, being a professional fighter, opening a business.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. What is it? So now you're coaching people on fighting fear, essentially, like utilizing the tools. What are some like helpful? I mean, you have this blueprint. Talk a little bit about it. I mean, I know that people are gonna...
like what you were just saying is one of the big pieces in the book, and I compare affect and effects. And again, you can start those kind of thoughts in your head where you're manifesting all this stuff, and then it gives you the jitters. You're thinking about all these feelings, and it gives you this physical thing that happens to you, whether it's a nervous breakdown, whether it's crying, yelling, screaming, throwing things, whatever the triggers and anchors and keeps you in that state. But essentially, like you're saying, your emotions cause effects, which then ripple through your body to make you have a physical effect, or it does something physically affecting your body. And those are the kind of things that we're laying out in the book. Understanding fear is the first chapter. What is it? Why are you scared, and why is it looked at like a bad thing? Fear is primal. It's actually a tool for survival. When you are experiencing fear, it was fight or flight. And now we're putting those same kind of things, same kind of values of fear on something like public speaking, which now gives you those same kind of primal effects and effects in your body, the same that happen when you fight, because fighting is extremely primitive. It's in everybody's DNA. Everybody, in some form of another, in your DNA, your ancestors fought for something. Food, for procreation, for land, for whatever. That everybody did it. You know, it's just over time we've been like curbed as a society to fit into this kind of mold. And, you you're not supposed to hit people, and you're not supposed to say things, and you're not supposed to do, and yeah, but you need some of these valves and outlets, and that's why the writing and journaling and getting these things out, getting your primal needs and thoughts and all these things, even if it's into a private journal, that's great. But in my case, like physical, being in a gym, doing all that stuff was the outlet, it was the valve for me. All that pressure builds up and let it go.
Yeah, you had mentioned, like the whole idea of like moving kind of relaxes the mind, and so that's a big part of it. Is so I can imagine you emphasize that a lot. Obviously in the for fighting, but I suppose it could be for any kind of exercise. What are some of the other like I guess your core tenets for like actionable advice for people?
Reflection is big. Celebrating small wins is big. The reframing is big. Those are a couple of things that span across the book and the masterclass, the online course, which was my purpose in writing these things. The book was for me to bridge that gap between business professionals and gym goers, fighters, ironheads, whatever, the guys that wear the suits. They get this bad rep of like, they're geeks, they're nerds, they're flabby, they're out of shape, whatever. And then the other side of the coin is the gym guys get this bad rep like, hey, you're a meathead, you're an ironhead, you got no brains in there, you're just full of protein, whatever, these kind of things. Like, and I want to be one of these guys like, yeah, dude, I'll take a bullet, I'll eat punches, I'll bleed, and I'll sweat, and I'll lift weights, and I'll grind it out and get in the trenches. But also, on the other side of the coin, like, I got some decent thoughts in my head, even with the CTE, so.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, I obviously recognize that. I mean, you articulate and you express ideas well, and they're well-formed ideas, and from who you are and your background, I don't know if people just have fear of doing what you're doing because of their background, because of where they've been pigeonholed. Like you said, like I'm the gym goer, I'm the fighter. That's all I do. I don't speak, and so I think even for that demographic, it's important for people to understand that your thoughts matter. You can have good advice. The thoughts that you speak resonate with some people, if not most, and I think that's great. So I mean, kudos to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Of course. Do you have any like specific questions? I mean,
I could sit there and talk to you all day.
That's what I said about the 45 minutes too. Timer goes off. I'm like, dang, I could really use another 45 minutes with this guy.
For sure.
Yeah, I really enjoy your perspective. I think that I have no doubt the book's going to be a hit.
I appreciate that.
The masterclass, it lines up with it lines up with all the things that we've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time talking about. So for me, I'm excited. I'm excited for both of them. But I think maybe this is oddly self-serving, but I think people should hear your story. Right? I think that people that are afraid, when you hear about someone like yourself that comes from where you came from, that spent the time in the ring, really fighting, and that there's no flight in the ring, right? And when you start to parallel that to being afraid to go to somebody's house because you don't know them, or afraid to walk into a meeting and speak because you're not comfortable, right? You start to make those parallels, and you start to realize instantly that, whoa, okay, well, this guy knows what fear is and knows what it's like to be afraid. And he's writing the book on how to tell you the things that you can do to help you with that. That's someone I want to learn from. Not someone that just the neuroscientist that wrote it down and this is what it does and this is what it is. So I hope that people, when they find the book and when they find the masterclass, and hopefully they can find this or find some other outlet with it where you get to tell your story, because it's impactful for me, and I'm looking forward to all of it.
Appreciate it.
When are we expecting this to launch?
I work very well under stress, as you may have guessed.
Yes.
So I gave myself a deadline, and said that I'd like to be doing pre-orders by Christmas.
Okay.
Awesome.
And I'd like to release the book early January 2025.
Wow.
And we are also recording the final edits of our master class next week through December. And again, my partner's moving from Switzerland to Costa Rica in February, so we're looking to get that thing out before she moves too. So
amazing. So then I'm gonna order the book. It's gonna come in. I'm gonna read it. MJ's gonna read it. You're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about
I
it.
like that talk.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that.
Perfect. Now I got even more pressure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, no, I much appreciated. Anytime we get to, like MJ said, anytime we get to learn from someone who, is actually doing the thing. The neuroscientist doesn't step into the ring. Doesn't, maybe never experience true fear. Which, to be fair, they have their own skills, but nonetheless,
sure.
I think that's amazing to see someone passionate about something. And we talk a lot about passion, and passion built, right? You didn't necessarily start off saying, I'm gonna open a gym. You just did your thing because you wanted to do it, and you cultivated passion, and that's another important theme through a lot of our discussions. So much appreciated you coming in here
Guys, for
and
having me.
talking.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you want to check out more, what's your handle? You can say it again.
My handle's at Shaun Red Seal Muay Thai, and all of the words are spaced with underscores.
Perfect. So we'll
And
have.
we'll put it down there. It'll be right about here, I think.
Yeah.
Right now.
I'm super heavy on Instagram. Very rarely will I go on my Facebook and check that out, but you can get a hold of me super easy on Instagram. I also have a LinkedIn page for all my business professionals out there. That's something real new to me also.
Amazing.
I had a LinkedIn, but I was told it was really bad. So I just got that redeveloped. So go check out my LinkedIn. You can also find me, Shaun Alden Shubert. If you just Google my name, all my stuff will come up. You can search my name, Shaun Shubert, into YouTube and watch past fights and all kinds of interviews and podcasts that I've done that are on there too. So
Perfect.
Sweet.
Great. And you can, obviously, we're on Spotify, we're on most other podcast platforms. Give us a follow, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.